Claude is good at many things in the legal world. I think drafting contracts is an area where Claude is really bad. Seeing them send us AI generated contracts already, and I was seeing the writing on the wall. Like there is going to be some sort of shift here with the way that law is practiced. 99%. I think that
Wow.
automatable work will be automated. I think that I describe like AI to law as like search to yellow pages.
Welcome to Digitized Spotlight, your lens into the best builders in crypto and AI. I'm Amanda.
And I'm Winnie. On this series, we explore the latest trends emerging on chain and in AI and chat with those building at the forefront. In this episode, we go somewhere a little different at the intersection of AI, law, and the startup stack.
We chat with Logan, founder of Soxton, the AI native law firm that's automating the standardized legal work that's historically cost early stage founders tens of thousands of dollars in weeks of time.
At Strobe, one of our core theses is replatforming antiquated industries. And hate to say it, but big law might be the most antiquated of all, especially in the business model. It runs on a business model that's inversely related to efficiency. The more time lawyers spend on routine work, the more they bill. Soxton flips that. AI takes the first pass, lawyer reviews it and finalizes, and most contracts come back in less than 24 hours for a fraction of the cost. So I'm excited to go into this episode and talk to Logan about the future of an AI native law firm. Hey Logan, it's so great to have you on this episode of Digitized Spotlight. So I've had a front row seat through your journey through my seat at Strobe, and I'm excited for listeners to hear how you're rethinking how modern legal services should be delivered. So let's start from the very beginning. You've had one of the most unusual paths to founding a company that I've ever heard of. You were interning at the DA's office at the age of 12, if I remember, taught
That's
yourself how to code, cross-enrolled in MBA courses while you were at law school, and even launched your own CPG company. But the real turning point seems to be when you were an in-house interim GC at Blockdaemon. So can you walk us through kind of that aha moment you had when you were, in big law billing ridiculous $800 per hour rate, and then to now managing a legal budget and having to justify that same line item as an interim GC, and how that journey, led to you to starting Soxton?
Yeah, I mean, I've always lived at the intersection of law and tech. When I was 12, walked into the DA's office because I had seen Legally Blonde and asked for a job. And one of the first trials that I saw was a homicide trial where somebody had, it was a professor, I'm from a college town, had Googled directions from a different town to a town where his ex-wife lived, and also questions about murdering somebody. And there ended up being an expert witness from the FBI that was brought in to testify on this case because there was nobody around locally that had the computer forensics expertise. And while he was there, he taught me how to code just a little bit. And that, along with Mark Zuckerberg being Time Person of the Year the following year, really drove home my desire to understand technology. So I really cared about the gap between law and technology since I was in middle school. I wrote my Common App application on that when I was applying to college. And every internship I've ever had has had some sort of legal focus. And so I've spent a lot of time thinking through how the law has historically not kept up with the times. And so when I got to big law, when I worked at Cooley, dressed out of law school, I was really acutely paying attention to, especially Cooley is a law firm focused on helping startups and the most innovative companies get up to speed and get their legal needs met. And I was paying attention to what was happening on the flip side of that, and seeing that there was inefficiencies that happen across big law that just wouldn't be tolerated in any other industry. And I was also paying attention to the introduction of AI, and I was seeing how our customers and our clients were sending us questions that ChatGPT had already answered and asking them to review it. And I was seeing them send us AI generated contracts already, and I was seeing the writing on the wall. Like there is going to be some sort of shift here with the way that law is practiced. And then I had the opportunity to go in-house on a secondment, which is taking a break from big law to a GC type role at a multi-billion-dollar company. And then I was managing the legal budget. And then I was realizing that how big of a role AI was going to play internally within companies to manage budgets, and just how proficient it was. And so I started automating some things for myself in that role. And I just the writing is on the wall here. This technology, the big law and the practice of law itself hasn't dramatically changed in the last 100 years. The business model hasn't changed. The internet made it more efficient. And so I left because I think that, one, I saw how technology could be used but also I think that's where it's really exciting is using the technology to change the business. And I wanted to directly practice law in a different type of way.
Great story to get to hear.
Yeah.
So I have actually been working with some big law firms at the startup I'm currently at, and doing contracts, fundraisers. So
Yeah.
I'd love to better understand, so from the standpoint of a startup, what is it like to work with you? How does that compare to working with a big law firm?
Yeah, so we are an outside AI powered general counsel. And so we do formations, we do equity agreements, we can work with the contracts that your big law firm has already given you and just process them like normal. We can review NDAs, MSAs, and you can pretty much request anything from us. Like you go onto our platform and there's an open box where you can type in, here's my issue. And then what will happen on our side is a suite of agents will match it to the correct response, either like a contract that's already been vetted by attorneys or a rubric if it's something that you've uploaded from us, along with agents that are specially like trained based off of what you've done with us previously. And then that will be presented to an attorney. All of my attorneys have spent at least 4.5 years in big law at a Cooley, Wilson, or Fenwick, one of these big name places, will then review it and get back to you. And we charge $200 a contract end to end. And so I think that it's like we get back to folks in 24 hours if it's something routine and at a fraction of the price. And so most of our clients find that it's a much faster service and it's like a comparable experience and like work wise to big law, but it's easier because you can just like get it all in one place.
Amanda, I'm curious, for your most recent financing round, how much did you
Please tell me how much it was.
Yeah,
And Logan,
don't
let's
think I
hear
can,
how much that would cost, but it's done via Soxton.
Yeah, I don't know if I should say, but I will say that it's a really relevant interview right now.
We do price
we're
rounds.
talking about how to bring down our legal costs.
We do price rounds for $10,000 flat, and then we are able to close. The way that we do them is a little bit unique, and we've automated a lot of it, and so we're able to close them in a week if investors are cooperative.
Let's talk a little bit about that. That was going to be one of my next questions. I know what you guys are trying to pioneer is what you're calling the Soxton standard.
That's
kind
right.
of like the YC safe, but for Series A. For listeners that, don't know what that is, tell us more about how you think about it, how you think it's going to transform how venture financing will be done in the future. What is the benefits to the founder? How do you think investors will respond to this? And walk us through how you're thinking about it.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think that, so we help with safes too. And that's like the entry point for a startup, safes and token warrants, whatever you're raising on, we help with that. But I think that one of the most painful parts of the experience for founders and also for lawyers is managing a priced round, which is when those safes converts. And then later on, just getting investment when there's a series of 5 documents and then a whole suite of smaller little contracts that are associated with it. And it's frustrating as a lawyer from like the other side, whenever I was working in a big law firm, because it seemed like every time I was doing it, it was like the first time it had ever been done. It was like from scratch. Why are we rebuilding this process? And I think that's one of the things that I was most excited to tackle when I was starting this is that we first, as an initial step, have created what we call the Soxton standard. And so we've created a term sheet that has a set of defined terms. And along with the term sheet, you can download the set of NVCA documents, the National Venture Capital Association documents that happen in every single round. And normally whenever you're going through a round, these are negotiated. There's 2 and 3 and 4 turns where I, as a company, have my lawyers prepare it. It's sent across to investor councils. They create an issues list, and then it goes back and forth like that a couple times, and just like takes up a month sometimes to get finalized. When in actuality, especially at seed and Series A companies, what the terms say really don't matter all that much. The terms include a large list of provisions that are relevant to companies that are about to IPO and have just a lot of restrictions, and attorneys will get caught up on very small words that in practicality don't matter. And so we've created the terms that if you're agreeing to our term sheet, you've agreed to these terms, everything's on board. And so that's where investors have to cooperate a little bit. And I think that most investors are pretty willing to let their companies, their portcos save a lot of money, and are also on board that like these terms are just some ways for attorneys to like get more fees. And so we're able to automate that portion and really also automate the ancillary. So the board and stockholders have to approve it and automate the signature collection. protection. And so then the main thing that takes time is negotiating a side letter. But we've done 4 so far. We have a pretty long wait list for these, and we're able to close them in a week. And then in terms of who's getting a lot of value from it, we're also seeing that investors are liking it, and folks are choosing to do a Soxton standard price round as opposed to a safe round, because the QSBS stock, like the clock, is able to start sooner. And so then rather than paying $50,000 to have this price round, you're able to do it at a much earlier stage and get more benefits for investors. And then they also like for their portcos to save money. And our founders are really liking it because we can close it very fast. We can get it done.
I didn't even think of that. Like so many times we go through, in the early stages of the safe because it's faster, easier, cheaper. But if it is still as cheap and fast and easy, maybe we can obviously start a price round sooner. I didn't even think
investors get more protection. And then I think that QSBS is what folks are, which is like the clock to like not pay taxes on holding it, is like where we've seen I think that's expanding the market. Folks that otherwise wouldn't do it are like happy to, because they're able to get some tax benefits.
Where is, like, I'm sure people will have questions around like the legal judgment in that flow of, the docs that you kind of help create. Like what's like where do lawyers come in to kind of advise on certain things? Because like as a previous big law attorney, is some legal parts to it. It's not just all like workflows, right? Like curious kind of where lawyers are in the loop here.
Yeah, so I think that probably the most important thing, there's a few components where lawyers are important. And so first of all, the creation of the pro forma, that actually has to be 100% correct. And so who is getting how much stock and what at what price? And so we have folks that look at it. We have consultants that have worked for 20 plus years in big law, specifically creating pro formas. And so that is 100% reviewed by a person always. We automate it, and we have a lot of double checks and quality controls there, but that is 100% double checked. The other thing where I think that it makes a lot of sense is with due diligence. That's something that I think that investor counsel spends a lot of time on whenever they're doing a price round. And so going through the history of your corporate records and making sure that your company has good like corporate hygiene, which does matter. But I do think that from like a big law perspective, folks will get in the weeds a little bit too much sometimes as like an effort to like drive up bills. And I think that at Soxton, we have found a way to where if everything's in the data room and we can run all of the checks that folks would otherwise do in minutes. And if you've been like around with us for a while, we'll make sure that it's done appropriately. But really making sure that that is done is a good place for like human judgment to occur. Because sometimes companies have been operating without counsel for a while. And so things are pretty messy. And having a human that is like able to understand where the real risks are is important. And I think that the NVECA documents are debatable. I think that things in there can matter. I think that they're is what is called protective provisions, which are a list of terms and like rules that you have to go to your investors or have to get a board consent every time you're trying to do such action. And so making sure that you're aware of those whenever you're going through a price round. And at Soxton, we have a printout being like, here's what's in all these documents. Here's what the burden's on you going forward. But I think that if you're just going through a round, being aware what's in those and what that restriction is going to be is very important. But I think that most everything else, as long as you're aware, it doesn't matter all that much. I think I've seen many rounds where folks will get in the weeds over like a potential like IPO bottom price. It doesn't make sense for early stage companies and a waste of everybody's time and dollars. And then I think the final thing is the side letter. Whenever there's a lead investor, investors will ask for a lot of things. And this is one of the things that I am most passionate about in my role today is that investors are not doing you. It's great that they're investing. And I think sometimes, many times, first time founders will feel like it's like a favor, but it's really important to know what is in those side letters because it's to the investor's advantage to ask for a wide variety of things. And not all of them are market, and they can have very big consequences later on.
Yeah, no, that definitely is relevant. So we actually went through a priced round, so interesting to see it
congrats.
from your perspective.
Yeah.
And so I saw that you're partnering with some startup neobanks. So companies like Grow. I'm curious, like, what is driving that strategy and how that's part of your overall go-to-market?
Yeah, so we have a lot of companies that also serve similar ICPs. And I think that we've already experienced that when companies are incorporating with us, especially first-time founders, they're developing a whole stack. Like they're figuring out which bank is best to use, which payroll provider is best to use. And so that's like to our benefit to work alongside them and really target folks at the beginning whenever people are just trying to figure out the best service providers. And so there's some banks that will like pay for folks to use Soxton, or will use Soxton, pay for Soxton incorporations and other of our services services in exchange for using their accounts, which is a great part of our go-to-market. And I think that it's also wonderful that we're able to like help the same ICP and really develop some of these strategic partnerships.
We love covering consumer behaviors on the show, and you have a variety of different types of customers that you're serving.
Yeah.
You have like first-time founders, you have vibe coders, you have repeat founders, people running venture studios. I'm curious, like among the different founder archetypes, what kind of legal behavior, how do they engage lawyers differently? How do they use something differently? That's interesting. Because I do think, the difference between how a first-time founder and second-time founder uses and gets help from counsel is different. And what surprised you?
So I think that first of all, like the thing that is really fun about Soxton is we kind of like track the news, and like that's kind of across like also my customers. I have solopreneurs, vibe coders that are like doing this because the barriers to entrepreneurship are lower. I have first time founders that just got into some accelerators. I have founders that are doing this at schools, like trying to get funding. I also have folks leaving like hedge funds that are doing this that are a little bit older. I have folks that are like Series B founders that had $1 billion exit the first time around. So the way that I service all of these people is relatively similar in that their needs are the same, but the way that you communicate them are different. And like there's just various levels, but up and down all of these customers, folks like are the companies that are being started and the needs really track the news. And so like the Iranian war broke out, we had like 18 drone companies within like 2 weeks. Like there is
I didn't think of that.
Yeah. Like there is on Netflix a show about cults, and then we had like anti-extremism companies being started, like the Knicks won a couple weeks ago, and we had all these sports betting related companies.
No way. Yeah.
Pet longevity is always really big, and so we kind of like track like the zeitgeist of what's popular throughout the world. I think that like I joke that I'm like a month ahead of the VC essays, and what I'm seeing internally is what's popular. And like there's a voice tech company that recently like changed their requirements for having their services embedded into apps, and then like within 2 hours we had like 6 terms and conditions request updates, and like I like had to like I was able to figure out where it was coming from. But
what you're telling me is VC should go to you to get alpha.
Yeah, like we know what's going on. But I think that part's really fun, and like
that is cool.
Yeah, I think that in terms of what it's like to interact with these folks up and down the stack, is their needs are similar. Like I spend a lot of time explaining options in stock to folks, except for like second time founders that have done it before. But I think that it's just like the main desire across all of them is that they don't want to be spending time on legal. And so I think that creating an experience that feels like that, whereas like my first time founders, I think also are looking to us like as a source of truth. And so we spend a lot of time with them, like helping them understand how to talk to VCs, where a little bit more handholding through the bank account and like payroll provider process, and just answering other general questions about fundraising. I think is like where like the biggest discrepancy is. My second time founders, like there's like some companies that I was like, I want to invest. Like, you want to meet my investors? Like, they've got it. Like, they're good. Like, they worked at Palantir. They're in OpenAI. They're fine. Like, they don't need to have my money.
I guess another trend and around startups that we've seen is in the past there have been companies that have tried to tackle legal automation. I think most notably Atrium.
Yeah.
And then now obviously there's like a new set of vertical AI companies in the legal space. So I'm curious, like, what do you think of the Atrium model? What do you think is more sustainable and possible now with like recent advancements in AI?
Yeah, I think that Atrium is like really just the timing issue. They like shut down just months before OpenAI launched like publicly, and so I think that if they had stuck around a little bit longer, we'd be having a different conversation today. And I think that the AI is like really transformative because legal is based in text, and so it can transform the way that work is done, which is why I find it exciting and why we're a little bit different. I think one of the other differences between us and Atrium is that Atrium service law firms, and we both law firms and directly to customers, and we don't do that. Like, we only focus on servicing founders right now. And I think that you just have to be very clear on who your customer is and what you're building for, especially in the early days. And so those are 2 ways that we're different. When I think about the legal market today, I kind of put it into 4 buckets. And so you have like Harvey and Lagora, they're selling to AmLaw 200, big law firms. You have Spellbook, GCAI. There's a whole suite of tools that are selling to in-house legal teams and small smaller law firms. And then you have me that's like directly providing the services, which I enjoy because I like my customers. I like that I'm not selling to lawyers. And I also think that most of the opportunity here is innovating in the business model. And then you also have like a whole other suite that's like timekeepers and like CRMs and like these back office tools. And there's litigation, which I've not discussed, like that's not included in my buckets, but that's how I largely think about the landscape today. And I think that AI is what's made it possible for all of that. In law school, I wrote an essay on the lack of investment into legal tech. And
Now there's so many.
Yeah, it's crazy. I need to pull it back up.
What's interesting is the archetype of customers you're obviously servicing. The Harvey, despite kind of like how pervasive and popular Harvey and Lagoras are the world, my legal bills have not gone down, right? So like going to the part about business model is like, if these law firms are actually using Harvey and Lagora, shouldn't that decrease the time they're spending on, you know,
one would
what
think,
they're building? One would think, but I don't think my bills have gone down.
Yeah, I mean, I think that that's also like, I would not want to start a company where I was selling to lawyers. Like, I think that part of this is like, I really like who I'm servicing and I can do it in a better way. And I think that I'm really focused on the business model. Like, I think that I have so many friends in big law still, like I'm from my law school days. And I think that the things that I hear of just like stories are things that would just not be tolerated in other industries. Like things where folks are having like an 8-lawyer meeting catch-up meeting where nothing happens except to discuss how much the client is going to be billed for this meeting where nothing happened. And it just wouldn't be tolerated elsewhere. And I think that the billable hour no longer makes sense for something that now can be tech enabled. And so from first principles, anytime we're trying to do anything, it's not like thinking, how can I do this better than big law? It's how can I do this in the best way possible with the tech available to me? And also what will be in the future a year from now. And so that's how I really think about it. And I think that that leads to just better outcomes where you can do things faster, better, cheaper. And then like that savings is passed on to the other folks, and lawyers are no longer a blocker. That's the goal.
Yeah. Walk me through kind of like, I think what's top of mind for folks is how you've structured Soxton to have like legal protection. And you said it's AI powered external GCs, how you phrased it. If something were to come up, who is technically quote unquote responsible here? And like, what is like the legal protection for them?
So we're a law firm. And so just as you would engage any law firm, you sign an engagement letter with us. We have malpractice insurance. Attorneys are personally signing off on everything that we do. And so it's like as if you're engaging a normal law firm, and we take responsibility for what we're doing.
Cool. So it's like, that's great. So instead of having Claude write my NDA, which even if it's exactly the same as if Soxton wrote the similar NDA, founders will feel like it's protected because there's legal representation and there's a lawyer, is responsible for drafting it.
Exactly. And I think that I think that Claude is good at many things in the legal world. I think drafting contracts is an area where Claude is really bad. Like I can like get a little bit more into where I think Claude is good and not good. But I think that we are very good at getting to what's market, and we have a very clear understanding of what's happening, as like I've described, like the legal landscape across startups these days. And so making sure that you're not doing anything, I think that this is something that at scale we like really understand what specific firms are doing, and we understand what is acceptable and not acceptable and happening at pre-seed, seed, and Series A and Series B companies. And so that's like another benefit to using us that Claude just like doesn't have, is like we're not just like affirming what you're asking, we're providing a little bit more context onto what's going on.
And so building on that, what are I guess in terms of the terms, you're basically accumulating a data set. So like, what are you seeing in terms of trends? How are you going to either expand the platform to cover sort of new needs, or enhance like kind of how you're doing the automation to meet the current demands?
Yeah, I think that we are always looking to grow alongside our clients. And so we won't do anything that's out of scope for us at the moment. So we are a corporate governance focused firm, along with like commercial contracting work. That's where we spend the bulk of our time. We're looking to expand into IP work. So if anybody listening is an IP lawyer that wants to work at Soxton, you all soxton.ai, let me know. I think that's the number one request of things that we don't currently do. And then I think that like heavily regulated spaces we don't do. We're really good at making sure that we don't do anything that we don't have the expertise in, but once we get enough requests, we'll start looking into that. In terms of improving the technology, I think that we're really paying attention to what's happening and what folks are wanting. And so making sure that we're agents can interact with our platform, that agents are able to have access to all of your legal documents, you're able to request, that's like immediately on the horizon, and paying attention to whatever else our customers are really driving our product roadmap here.
Cool. I guess to close this out, let's do a few rapid fire questions, Logan. What's your favorite AI hack?
Oh, I like agents to write me daily newsletters about what's going on and all the other things that I have on my mind.
Love that one. I do that with podcasts. Like I have an agent produce it in a podcast for me.
I like that. Like summarize news.
Summarizing,
yeah.
yeah. What's the biggest legal bottleneck for early stage startups?
I think that it's getting like SOC grants out to their customers. And so whether that's like getting a 409A evaluation or just like making sure that they have the equity actually issued, I think that's the biggest issue that my early stage customers have.
And then what's the hardest part of startup law to automate?
I think that it's like helping folks understand what they don't know. I think that like there's like so many like legal things that need to be done, and just like helping folks understand and feel comfortable with like the process. It's also fun because like Claude will suddenly start like suggesting new things to customers, and like an example is Claude has recently started suggesting that employees ask to become board observers, and so we're seeing like a large number of markups. Wait,
that's insane,
right? So like, but like it's like in the last week, all of our customers that are sending out offer letters are getting these markups back where their employees want to have board observer rights. And so it's just like that's like an example of like AI.
Yeah, like where they're hallucinating or trained on weird stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, but that's always like a unique problem where we're like, oh, like this new thing that we have to figure out how to like manage more appropriately. But that's a challenge.
And last question is, what's a prediction for what percentage of routine startup legal work that will be automated in 5 years' time?
99%. I think that the automatable work will be automated. I think that I ascribe like AI to law as like search to yellow pages. Like I think that it's going to transform the way that it's practiced. And I think that the automatable will be automated. And then what will be remaining is like the very niche, like things that are bespoke and edge cases. And like the cost for those will increase a lot.
I love it. Logan, it's been great to have you on Digitized Spotlight. Where can listeners and founders find more, use Soxton, and learn more?
Soxton.ai, and then you can follow me at Logan Brown 799 on Twitter. Thank you.
Thanks for joining us as we chat with Logan. It's been fascinating to see how Soxton is rebuilding legal services from the ground up.
What I love about it is how it's rethinking what AI-powered legal services is and helps reduce the costs for early stage founders when they think about financing and legal services and NDAs. Follow us as we chat with more founders building at the intersection of on-chain and AI.